I just hope I'm worthy enough for this. When they were in high school, Kesey and his brother Chuck would drive to eastern Oregon with their dad, hunting or going to the Pendleton Roundup. They often stopped at Celilo Falls on the Columbia River. The mile-wide river narrowed at Celilo Falls to 140 feet and dropped over large rocks. Indians stood on wooden platforms and speared salmon as the fish leaped from the water. Wooden racks on the riverbank held rows of cleaned and gutted salmon, preserved for winter food. Tribes from the Pacific Northwest came to Celilo Falls as they had for thousands of years. A tradition soon to be damned by the demand for electricity. In 1952, Kesey's junior year in high school, construction began on the Dalles Dam. 5 years later, when Kesey was a senior in college, he drove to Celilo Falls, parked on the side of the road, and joined the crowd gathered on the riverbank. Drums pounded and chanting filled the air. Kesey passed around a gallo jug of wine. He was pretty well lit when the lower falls were covered, then the middle falls, and finally the platforms and rocks of the upper falls. A howl rose from the people. Salmon flashed past just below the surface. Suddenly, a bare-chested Indian, long black hair, flipping beads of water, raced out of the water, through the crowd, onto the road, where a fully loaded cement truck swallowed him in its massive grill. Kesey ran up to look. Nothing there, not even a wet spot on the pavement. Kesey flung the wine bottle into the bushes. The following year was when I met Kesey at the graduate writing class at Stanford. The draft was still on, a leftover from World War II. Everyone age 18 had to sign up. I decided if I was going in, I was going in as an officer, and I was awarded an NROTC scholarship. Kesey had screwed up his shoulder wrestling at the University of Oregon and received a 4F deferment and never went into the military. At the end of our year at Stanford, I went in the Marine Corps and spent a year at the Officers' Basic School, learning the rudiments of pooping and snooping. Gotta know that. Kesey stayed at Stanford another year. His Perry Lane neighbor, Vic Lovell, turned him on to a job at the Menlo Park VA Mental Hospital, testing drugs to see what would work on soldiers to make them better in the war game. Steroids of the mind. 8 o'clock every Tuesday morning, the doctor gave Kesey a pill, or a shot in the arm, or a glass of bitter juice. He went out and came back later, asked questions, how the drug was affecting, took blood pressure and temperature, then left Kesey alone. Sometimes the pill was a placebo. Other times he experienced mild euphoria or stimulation. And every once in a while, a real wowsy-dowsy, all-out fly you to the moon and throw away the wings mind-blowing high. Kesey and the other subjects compared notes and came up with a plan. When they give us the good stuff, we'll pretend nothing is happening. And when we're out loose, we'll be on the streets, happy and high. 6 months after completing the drug experiments, Kesey was hired as an aide at the VA hospital, working on the same ward where the experiments took place. One night, Kesey, drunk on smuggled-in vodka, was working his night shift in the mental ward. He was too sleepy, tired, funked, and sapped to do anything but get through the shift, looking out into the room through a window at the patients. They had serious problems, Kesey realized. People hallucinating, people in bad shape. Being crazy is painful, he thought, whether from taking a drug or trying to lead the normal American way of life. It's hell, and there's nothing fun about it. Kesey felt like he was seeing it through a lens, but it was hard on his eyes. What's this? Some guy shuffles in, a manic depressive up out of bed. Must have just come in from washing his rectum in the can, using the mop, no doubt. He wants to know if he can please mop something. Fine, Kesey says, and puts him to work, mopping the floor. Kesey's eyes drift to the door of the doctor's office, the same doctor who gave him the experimental pills. Kesey fingers the ring of keys on his belt, moves to the door, walks in the room, opens a desk drawer, and surveys the bottles inside. His eyes widen, mouth opens in a soundless laugh. He takes out a bottle. His hair sticks out. His ears flap forward. His aura smashes against the ceiling, bounces around the room, and paints the walls red, orange, and green. Kesey pockets the bottle, closes the drawer, leaves the room, locks up, goes back to his station. The old guy slops with the mop. Kesey wide awake now, stone sober, aura back into its calm halo. He counts the minutes until the end of his shift. Then out he goes. Great Gawd Awlmighty, free at last. 200 hits of 100% pure Sandoz Laboratory LSD stashed in his pocket. Yeah. Too much popping, isn't it? Yeah, okay. You can still hear me here, huh?
Yes.
Okay, good. Those first LSD highs were innocent fun. Groups of 6 or 7 of us at Kesey's up all night, laughing and grooving. No mystical experiences or time traveling or probing inner regions of the psyche. A group grope, maybe. Nothing sex-driven. Everyone fully clothed, crawling over and climbing out from one another in a mixed-up pile, unable to tell whose body was whose, even your own. Then up laughing and drinking wine, listen and play along with music on the record player, yakking, take a downer, stagger off to bed. Kesey was working the night shift at the mental hospital. The peyote tea he drank before he left home tied his stomach in knots. He sat at the window and watched the patients, prowling, scratching, muttering, leaning catatonic against the wall. Kesey squeezed his gut to stop the churning. A bolt of blue light shot into his eyes. A man stood on the other side of the window and looked in. He had a broad face and a flat nose and long black hair. He was thick-muscled and bare-chested. His face shimmered and his hair radiated in concentric waves. He opened his mouth and words came out, circled by colored bubbles. Fog, fins, cards, boat, broom. The bubbles popped and the words fragmented. The man's eyes widened and salmon swam in the viscous orbs. Water shot from his ears and rose up the window to his chest and over his head. He turned and swam away, the sinuous movement of a salmon, tail whipping back and forth. Then he vanished, just like on the road at Celilo Falls. Kesey grabbed his pen and notebook and began writing. Black boys in white suits up before me to commit sex acts in the hall and get it mopped up before I can catch them. The first lines of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He finished the book while in the writing class, and it was published in 1962. Okay. In 1969, well, let's have a drink. Got it wet, though. In 1969, I was working with the Grateful Dead at their warehouse in Nevada, California. After some rows with their manager over the way he was running things, the Dead hired a new manager, a minister of all things, and he was, by God, going to elevate these boys to the supreme heights. The band was in the warehouse running through a sassy R&B song. When he walks in, nay, strides purposefully, their new manager. He deposited his briefcase at the foot of the band, ending the song with a resounding thud. He looked over and asked me what was I doing there? Just listening to the ding-dong bell of the Church of Lost Consciousness, boss, and waiting for Monday morning to come down and give me a newborn glimpse of reality. Oh, he said, and turned away, dismissing me. It's happening, men, he said. The very thing needed in order for you to jump to the higher rung and grasp once and for all the success you so rightfully crave. Can the shit and give us the news, Jerry said. I can tell it's not going to be good, or you wouldn't be burying your surplus so obvious. The new tour schedule is in, and for the most part, it's an easy swing. But there's one leg that's going to be tough. You have to play New York City on a Friday afternoon and Austin, Texas that next night. That's impossible, roadie Rex Jackson hollered. No way we can head out and load in that quick, Ramrod said. We need a miracle, Bobby said. You a flat-out numbskull, Big Ben said. He drew his .22 caliber six-shooter from its holster, held it up and spun the cylinder. The manager stepped back. Boys, the Lord will give you strength. Strength we have, what about sleep, Phil said. You'll have to make do. This is the only way I could set up these shows. But don't forget, you hired me just for this purpose. Yeah, but not to kill us, Jerry said. Sorry, boys. The contracts are signed. Either make these dates or you'll never play another hall on this planet. I'll help you every way I can. You gonna lug the equipment, Jackson said. You gonna play your ass off on these gigs, Phil said. No, my job is to stay home, scheduling you even deeper into the ecstasy of success. And with the blessing of the Lord to support you, take that Lord shit and shove it, Billy, the drummer said, hitting the bass drum for emphasis. I want to hear you sing some gospel, Big Ben said, about how are you going to make us rich and all. You know I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't play an instrument, but I am one Lord lovely businessman. People get ready, Big Ben began singing. There's a train a-comin', you don't need no ticket, you just climb aboard. There's no room for the hopeless sinner, just for those who have faith, praise the Lord. Amen, amen, the manager cried, a big smile on his face. Now, if there's anything I can do to ameliorate this situation. You're going to help us any way you can, right? Jerry said. Of course I will. Then get us some speed. Speed, he sputtered, wringing his hands. Speed? Yeah, not just any no-good kitchen shit either. But I know nothing of such matters. Time to learn, Jerry said. I want some Obitrol. Yeah, it's got to be Obitrol. Simple as that. I'm a man of the faith. I can't stoop to such. Do what you have to do, Rex Jackson interrupted. I'm with Jerry. Me too, Ramrod said. Get enough for us all. I'll take just a small hit, Bobby said. But you have to be what? Oh, but you have to score. Your name isn't Reverend. It's camel dung, Billy said. Heathen camel dung at that, Phil said. You'll be so low that snail shit on the bottom of the ocean is going to look like shooting stars to you. Boys, stop it. You're not being fair. I've been working around the clock to put my house in order, and it's a mess, a real mess. And what do I get in return? Opprobrium at every juncture. Why are you treating me this way? Because it's your birthday, Mickey Hart said. And the band laid into a rollicking version of the old song. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. We polished off the cake, and the ministerial manager left, still disgruntled. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. The best part of this is when I was reading through it this afternoon, I realized I left one page at home. Then I realized, nobody's going to know the difference. Well, so we're going to open the floor now for questions and answers.
Is that in one of your books?
Oh yes. I didn't tell you about this, is I've written a big book called Cronies. 580 pages, 70 chapters, all about the adventures with Kesey and Neil Cassidy and the Grateful Dead and the Merry Pranksters. And it's now in New York City looking for a publisher and having no luck because I realized this is not an East Coast book. No sex, no violence, no mystery, no torture. No, it's not going to sell. It's not going to be a big hit. They don't want to touch it. But now I think my agent has realized that. I got an email from her today, and she says she's trying a publisher in Oregon.
Yeah. And
then also I wanted to go with, what's it called? Counterpoint Press in Berkeley, one of the best publishing outfits anywhere. They publish all of Wendell Berry's books. And Wendell Berry was in the class at Stanford with Kesey and me. So we're still pals. So we'll see what happens. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Go home.
Who else was in your class at Stanford, Ken?
Well, the other really well-known, you probably haven't heard him, was Ernest Gaines. He wrote Miss Pittman's something or another. They made it into a movie.
Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman.
Yeah, autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. And I can't remember who else was.
McMurtry fellow, wasn't he?
Larry McMurtry came in to the class the year after I left, and Kesey was still there, and they became big buddies, and he'd be over at Kesey's house all the time and everything. And you know, after Kesey died, after a few years, Larry called Faye, Kesey's wife, and said he was sick. Could she come down and see him? And she said, sure. And she went down there and stayed a few days, and then came home, and then turned around and went right back and called up her family and says, Larry and I are getting married.
Oh.
Yeah, so how about that? So she's married to Kesey and now to Larry McMurtry. Rolling in books.
What about Wallace Stegner?
What?
Stegner. Wasn't he?
Wallace Stegner. Yeah, Wallace Stegner is a writer of Western books. What was his book called? Go Tell on the Mountain, was that it? Yeah. And he was the head of the writing department. And it was his thing there. And the fellowships that he gave out were called the Stegner Fellowships. And it was quite an honor to get one. Neither Kesey or I had one in the first year, but we had both scouted around and picked up a fellowship called the Give It to the Guys That Can't Get Any Other One.
So in that letter that I read from Kesey to you in 1959, he said he was having a really bad writer's block. He had 10 pages to go on a novel he
In 1959?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he might have started sometimes a great notion then.
No, 50, wasn't it Zoo or something?
Well, he wrote a book called Zoo that he had written before he even came to the class.
Oh, I see.
But he didn't like it, and he didn't want it published, and he left instructions to never publish it. At the same time said, what's his name? Hemingway had done this.
Oh, him.
One of those guys. Yeah, one of those guys. He said Hemingway had done the same thing. He had written stuff and he left instructions, never publish it. But a few years after he died, all of it came out because, you know, money in the bank. But nobody's touching Zoo.
What's it about?
I have no idea. So when I first met Kesey, the Stegner did a smart thing. He had a party on his porch before the class started so we could get to know each other informally. And so I came up on the deck, and there at the end was this guy leaning against he wasn't even leaning, he was standing there like that, not leaning there, his hands not in his pocket. And he had these blue eyes, drew you to him like filings to a magnet. And I went over and we shook hands, and he says, Ken Babbs, he says, I've heard of you. He says, you were up in the city there at North Beach, he says, at the place where they were having open mic, and you got up there and you started railing on all the beatniks on North Beach about how they should get out and get jobs, you know, and do all they could to contribute to the American way of life and not be a big, you know, whatever it is on other people. And I said, that was satire. I said, what's the matter with those people? They couldn't dig it. They threw me out in the street. I said, but I've heard of you too, Ken Kesey. And he says, oh, what do you mean? I said, I've heard you've already written a novel before the class even starts. What's that all about? He says, it's all about the American way of life, you know, the way you buddy up with other people. You don't try to participate in what they pass off as the American dream, which is nothing but a lifetime of debt. He says, you buddy up and you help each other out. He says, and you drink a lot of wine and play a lot of music and do a lot of dancing. I said, oh, sounds good to me. So what's the point? Wallace Stegner. Okay, who's next? Okay.
Can you tell us some stories about maybe Mexico or about Mountain Girl or sometimes in the Redwoods that you guys spent, stuff like that? Just a really good story out of that time period.
Okay, who wants to stay till midnight? Well, what happened?
Tell a story about the ice.
The what?
The ice delivery.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Well, I'll lead into it with this, that we all got busted in La Honda for pot at Kesey's
That's
place.
the mugshot right down there.
Yeah.
Right down there.
Oh, yeah, that's his mugshot. But anyway, I took a chapter out of my book, Cronies, and I had it printed up as a chapbook, and it tells the story of that arrest and what happened afterwards. So you can pick that up out front when we're done. But Kesey was up for sentencing, and he faked his suicide, left a note on the beach, said he couldn't stand it, the jail to confine his spirit, which would be bounding off the ceiling and come down and grovel on the floor. He says, so he's gone. And so he was gone. He went with another friend to Mexico. And at the time we were doing, the rest of us, well, Kesey was doing it with us when we were doing it, and this is how we got to know the Grateful Dead. We doing this show called The Acid Test every Saturday night around the Bay Area. And so we were going to L.A., and so when he went to Mexico, I, with the bus and the pranksters and the Dead and all, we went to L.A. and we're doing the acid test there. And it came to the night, the next day, LSD was going to be illegal in California. And at the same time, Life magazine was going to put out a special on LSD, and they hired this photographer to shoot all of us a fake acid test, strobe lights and costumes, dance and all that. And so when that was going on, before midnight, I went over and tapped all the pranksters on the shoulder and said, let's go out on the bus. And they said, what's up? And I said, well, no more California, no more LSD, we'll get busted. I said, let's go to Mexico. And so we did. And we hooked up with Kesey, and we spent 6 wonderful months on the beach down in this little sleepy town called Manzanillo. We had 2 houses, all of us in both houses. And then every morning at dawn, this Mexican would come along to the house and yell, hello, hello. And we'd all yell back, hello, hello. And so one morning I was up and I heard, hello. And I went out and I said, hello. And I looked and he had a block of ice. Because cielo is Mexican for ice. I said, oh, that explains that puddle of water. It's always in the steps. He says, dinero. So I had to cough up the money for all those blocks of ice that building. You asked about Mountain Girl. Well, she was a young, I think a student in back east, North Carolina or something. She came to California, and she landed in Palo Alto, and the first person she ran into was Neil Cassidy. And so she, oh my gosh, she could not believe this guy, and he got her in the car, and he drove her up to Kesey's, and once she got up to Kesey's and saw the bus and everything, she stayed. But as you know, as time went on, she had a child, Sunshine Kesey, with Kesey. Sunshine was born in Mexico, as a matter of fact. It was in May, and Kesey wanted Mountain Girl to call her Kumquat May. But after a while, we were back in the States, she hooked up with Jerry Garcia and married him and has 2 wonderful kids from him, Annabelle and Trixie. And she still lives in Eugene, is one of our gang. The pranksters are still around, the ones that haven't died off, and we still get together all the time and try to do stuff.
Wavy's still around, right?
Wavy Gravy is still around, yes, he's my age. And Wavy is unique. I mean, you talk about unique. He is unique. From New York City, he was a stand-up comedian talking, and he lived above the gaslight in an apartment. And he told the guy down there, he says, we need to pick us up and get some musician. And this guy was up in his house typing up songs and writing everything. And so he got Bob Dylan to go down there and start singing down there. And so then he was Hugh Romney then. He had a lot of different names. But he moved to California, and this hog farm up on a hill overlooking L.A., they needed someone to take care of the place. And so he did, and the communes formed there, and they became the hog farm. And they still exist as the hog farm, and a real powerful group in California, and even in the world. They went to India and started this SIVA thing, which was raise money for kids with needing eye problems to get their eyes fixed. So I still see him once in a while. Yeah.
Intersection with Hunter Thompson?
We're going to be here all night. You better pass that LSD around. I can't remember where we first met Hunter Thompson, but we ran into him a lot. He came to Eugene one time to talk, and he was really messed up. Kesey and I had to be up there on the stage talking to keep the crowd there until Hunter came down from his room upstairs. And finally this one guy stood up and says, we're tired of listening to you assholes up there. Where's Hunter Thompson? And Kesey went down and grabbed him. He says, You want Hunter Thompson? He says he's not here. Here. He gave him $10. I said, here's your money back. Now get out of here. Then he kicked him up the aisle. But anyway, Hunter came down finally, and the reason he was so messed up with these two movie makers in San Francisco that he knew, they had gotten in a fight, brothers, and one killed the other. What was that? Mitchell Brothers. Yeah, the Mitchell Brothers. And so he finally had enough, and he comes stumbling off the stage, and he says, Babbs, get me out of here. And there was a cart there that they took, stuff in and out for the kitchen and that. I laid him down on that and threw a sheet over him. And wheeled him out the door, and the bus was parked out there, and the door was open. So I got there, and I tipped him into the bus, and got in, and we slammed the door, and we drove to Kesey's house and stayed up all night playing poker. And in the morning, I was crouched there in the back of the bus, and the guy comes up, he says, hey, Babbs, come on out here. Hunter Thompson's out in the middle of the field in the Cadillac. He got in Kesey's Cadillac, convertible, with the top down, and tried to leave. But he went through the gate into the pasture, and he couldn't get out. So we had to go get him and get him going. And then the next time he showed up, he was writing a story for a running magazine about the Hawaii Marathon.
The Curse of Lono.
Curse of Lono, yes. And he couldn't finish it, and so they brought him to Eugene and put him in a motel there with them, and trying to force him to finish his story. And he says, I need pot. He says, give me some pot. And they said, pot? How are we going to get pot? He says, get Babbs. He'll get you some.
That's Eugene, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, used to be able to buy lids of pot anywhere for $30, 4 fingers. Good old Mexican weed, seeds and stems. Had to shake it and get those seeds out of there. That's the best pot in the world. You have is new pot. I don't even like it. It's too strong. Makes me cough. So anyway, I brought the pot, and Hunter was in the bathroom still, and they said, yeah, we got the pot, and he threw open the door, and he had the whole thing of firecrackers, and he threw it at the editor's feet, and bang, 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 jumping all over the place. So he finished the story anyway, and then he was getting ready to go, and so he called Kesey and me to go down to the Vets Club and have a drink with him before he caught his plane. And so we went there and did that, and so we were getting ready to leave, and Kesey and I were out in the Cadillac with the top down, and Hunter was starting to get in a car, and Kesey says to me, Babbs, he says, yell at Hunter, get him over here. I said, hey, Hunter, I says, what time did you say your plane was leaving? And he comes running over, and he's got his whole outfit on. White shirt, white pants, white socks, white sneakers, long cigarette holder, And he's coming over with his cigarette holder, and he says, let's start. And Kesey throws these firecrackers down in his shoe. Oh my God, you should have seen him jump and dance. That was better than the cowboy in the saloon and the shooting with the 6-shooter. Okay, who's next?
I got a question.
Oh.
What happened to Who Shot the Water Buffalo as your Vietnam book, and you had another one prior to that?
Prior to that?
That got lost or something?
No. This book I wrote, I was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot in Vietnam in 1962 and 63. And I'd been through the writing program, and I wanted to be a writer. And I realized, oh my God, this is a perfect setting for a book.
Why didn't they think of it sooner?
But it was 62 and 63, so there were no other American units in there as units. We were the first one as a full squadron to go in there. Otherwise, it was just individual, what do they call them, advisors. So anyway, I started writing it when I was over there. I'd go in the company office and tent, actually, and type at night and type up all what I was thinking and how I was wanting to do stuff and send them home. And what I did, I realized what I'll do here is I'll use all the settings and some of the battles and some of the actual people, you know, in the villages and in the government and that. But I made up all the other characters. Every other character in the book is made up because I did not want anybody in my squadron to think I was writing about him. And so it worked out real good. And so in 1964, well, I sent it off to Sterling Lord, Kesey's agent. And in 1964, when we took the bus to New York, I met with Sterling. And he liked it, but he went through it and showed me all the things I should fix and all that. So I took it and I put it in a box. And we went back. And it just sat in that box. But it became kind of famous. Because in the book, The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, Tom Wolfe is there at the acid test graduation hanging around, and he'd heard I'd written this book, and he asked me about it. I said, yeah, it's right there. I said, you want to see it? He said, what? I said, here, and I took out a bunch of pages. I said, I handed it to him. I said, here, you can have these. And he says, what, you mean keep them? I said, yeah. And I forgot about it. But later on, when we were cleaning up, I noticed he had put them all back in there. And so as time went on, I lost that copy. So it's completely gone, so I just gave up on it. But one of the guys in my squadron, my best buddy, I had sent him at one time, you know how you type in those days, you make a carbon copy. I'd sent him the carbon copy of the whole thing, and he still had it, and he sent it to me. So after Kesey died, this is, I don't know how many, 40 years later? I thought, what am I going to do now? And I thought, well, I'll work on that Vietnam novel. And so I had to scan all those pages into the scanner and put it into a Word program and then work on it and everything. And got it done and sent it back to Sterling Lord, and he sold it the next day. So that was really good. That came out in 2011. And finally it went out of print, and they had all the paperbacks, and authors are allowed to buy what's left over if they want to when they put them what they call on remainder. So I bought 1,500 of them on remainder for $1.50 each. And now I sell them on Facebook for $10. And here, I shouldn't have said that.
You pay $9.50, sell them for $10.
Yeah. So I have them here tonight too, and I'll give them to you for a deal for 10.
It's usually 20. Yeah.
But the beauty of it is that on Facebook I have a special page for it, and I found out how to put a thing on there where you push the button, pay now, and it takes you to a page where you put in your credit card information, and I get information on email, who it is and what they want, and the money goes into my PayPal account. So it's really neat. And I do the same thing now with We Are Arrested, with another Facebook page. Because I'll tell you why. You come to these events, you know, I do these readings all the time, but you never get paid for them. You know, so you come, you got to, you know, money, time, or anything, get here, find a place to live, pay for that, eat and all that, you know, go home. And you're in the hole unless you can take home a little cash. See, so every one of you here tonight, buy one of them. I mean, the property taxes are coming up. Well, I'm burying my soul here tonight, aren't I? Tell you what.
Out of all the acid tests, what was your favorite?
Of all the what?
Out of all the acid tests.
There's this one at Muir Beach we did, in which on the ocean down there in north of San Francisco, the Dead set up at one end and the Merry Band of Pranksters at the other end, because you know the Merry Band of Pranksters is actually band. We all play instruments. And we do a form of music called communication, what is it?
Non-verbal communication.
Yeah, that's right. It's a form of nonverbal communication. That's it. Because we learn the most important thing in music, and I wish all musicians could learn this. When you're playing, you just can't be into your thing you're doing. You got to be listening to everybody else and playing along with everybody else, and they got to be playing along with you. And when that happens, it's like a good basketball team. This is why Bill Walton loved the Grateful Dead so much, Because as a basketball player, he realized on the court when that happens, it's magic. And when it happens in music, it's magic. So anyway, we'd set up one end and they'd set up the other end. And sometimes they'd play, sometimes we'd play, sometimes we'd play at the same time. At the same time, this movie we had made, the bus trip, would be on the walls along with the light shows. And 2 cams in the middle of the floor, one for adults and one for kids. And Owsley, you all heard Owsley, I hope, the LSD sort of king guy that worked with the Grateful Dead for a long time. He never took the stuff too much, but for some reason this one night he got really high. And the band was playing, the Dead was playing and really going, and he went out and got this chair, one of these like wooden chairs, and it was a wooden floor, and he started pushing that chair around the floor to the band, you know, and the band started playing to him. And out the kitchen door came Neil Cassidy pulling a dishwasher with a hose, by the hose, and there was water in the dishwasher, and he was blowing it into the hose and blowing it across the floor. Squirting them, it's got to get it going. And I was like, you know what the most important thing about life is? Having fun. That's what my real sermon is these days, even on Wednesday. Is that no matter what's going on in your life or all around you or anything, you got to find the groovy spot where you can, take it and find some kind of way to see getting out of it and enjoying it. Because I'll tell you one thing, we're all fuck-ups. Yeah, but the secret is not to let it hang you up. And, you get over it, and you look back, and you realize these give you some of the best stories you got in your life to tell other people. Because I don't know how long it takes, but after a while they're funny. Yes, sir.
I was listening to KLCC during the Woodstock thing, and they said that when the guy was on the stage going off about the Great Lakes and all that, that it was you that finally got him on the stage.
Well, that was a good scene. I was at Woodstock, and the Grateful Dead were up there, and this big storm hit, and the stage was just torn to pieces. But they started playing, and they started playing Love Light. And this guy, nobody knew where he came from. He's really a good-looking guy. There's a video of him on YouTube, and you see he's a really good-looking guy. And he got on there, and he started talking about the fourth coast. And it was the coast of the Great Lakes, and he was going on and on about it. And Bobby Weir said to me, he said, "Babbs, get him off of there." So I lit up a joint, and I walked up to him and handed it to him, and he started taking a puff, and I took him by the arm and escorted him off, and then Ramrod passed him right down to the crowd. I got a great chapter in my book about Woodstock. In fact, you can see it on YouTube. Yeah. Go to YouTube, Ken Babbs, and it'll be on there, the Woodstock story. I read it where did I read that? Tsunami? You know what's going to happen with my book, Cronies? I eventually am going to read every chapter, all 70 of them at these readings. And they're all going to be on the YouTube. What the hell? Hey, if you guys know the Oregon author Don Barry?
Yes.
Anybody know him? Trask, yeah, that's his name of the book. He wrote at the same time Kesey did. They were contemporaries. And his book is about a guy settled in over there by, where is it, Tillamook or not Tillamook? Yeah, it was around that area. Yeah. And so he wrote 3 books in this series, but then somehow, even in those early days of the internet, he got on it and started working on the internet. He was a painter and he did all kinds of artwork. And he started putting everything on the internet, and finally he quit trying to publish it all. He said, he says, I never made anything from those books, from publishing. He says, but now I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of people are reading my stuff. He says, who cares if I make any money or not? That's what you do when you write. You what? I do. I'm the same way. I write for my audience. I want people to read this stuff and enjoy it and dig it. Yeah, that's more important than anything. But it's nice to make a little money, too.
So $1.50 tonight? Is that
Yeah, yeah. So I'm raising the prices on everything.
When do you think we can read Cronies? And what's
When can you read Cronies?
yeah.
Well, you got to wait till it's published, and it hasn't got a publisher yet. So I want everybody
How do we
here.
help you?
Okay, everybody here send a letter to Sterling Lord Agency, New York City, and say, where is Cronies? We want Cronies. Huh?
How much money does it take to do it?
How much what?
Money.
Money to get it published?
Los Angeles lettuce leaves. Money. Cash.
What are you talking about? I don't know. I don't publish books. How would I
More than $100.
know? Well, you can self-publish. I mean, if it all else fails, I could self-publish. You know, that's the way to go. A lot of people are doing it now. What?
We want to read your book so bad we'll help you finance this thing. I will.
Will you? Well, everybody send me $100. And I'll send you a manuscript. That's the whole book. Yeah, all right. I'm up for that. Yeah. Ken Babbs, Dexter, Oregon.
Did you ever write under the influence of LSD?
Well, that's a funny question. Under the influence of LSD, ever write? I might have scrawled some stuff or drawn some pictures at some time or another. But no, LSD was always an active thing for us. I mean, we didn't do shit like that. We were out playing music and mingling with people, and, you know, and putting on our own made-up dramas. This is the beauty of the bus trip we took, is by then we were sick of writing all that typing, and so we started making home movies, and so we took this bus to New York for Kesey's Sometimes a Great Notion, the publication party, and we decided to film and tape the whole thing and make a full-length movie out of it that would show on the big screen, because it would be a movie that had never been seen, or a kind of thing that had never been made, because here we are, we're going, you know yourself, you go to 7-Eleven at midnight, there's something going on in that parking lot. Well, this is true even in 1964 all over the country. When that bus was pulling into a gas station, kids and people would come roaring from all over, seeing it and everything, and they'd be getting into something, and we'd be out there with our instruments playing, and, you know, and having a real good time out there and filming and taping the whole thing. And also, we were high all the time on LSD, because we had this orange juice big jug of stuff in the refrigerator full of, you know, that was the LSD. So this would be the movie. It would be, you know, a kind of quasi-documentary, a kind of homemade thing, and also laced with LSD. You still haven't seen that movie. Nobody's got the guts to make that. No, you know why? Oh, that won't sell. There's no murder in there. There's no car chase in there. But who cares? Hey, but by the way, you can actually see that movie by ordering it from Zane Kesey, Kesey's son, from his website, Zane Kesey. He'll sell you that DVD of that movie. We finally got it together. Well, then we did the first two chapters of it, leaving and getting to New York City, and then Kesey died before we finished it. But anyway, those two, they're like an hour and a half each.
Did you ever meet an alien or Sasquatch or supernatural creature on your travels?
What'd you say your name was?
I'm a fairy, yes.
See there?
What's your name?
She's tooting her own horn.
All three.
Yeah. Well, you take trips on LSD that you can't imagine unless you've done it, and meet all kinds of things. But I'll tell you what it is now, is dreamland is where you really trip out. I mean, in dreamland, where do these people come from? Where do these adventures come from? God, they're wonderful. In fact, I'm getting behind on tonight's train. Chapter 12.
Train's pulling out.
Huh?
You want to sit down?
No, I'm okay. Okay.
What was it like coming back from Vietnam in, what was it, 64 or
Yeah.
65? I mean, the war hadn't blown up really huge by then.
No, not till 65. It was really something. When I came back, you got on the plane in Vietnam, and we got off the plane in California and picked up and go home. And I had my book waiting. I took 30 days leave. And so I worked on that for a week. And then my wife and I got in the car. We drove up to, the hell's that big ritzy town on the coast? One of those big ritzy towns on the coast. Rich thing and everything. Got out and I smoked a couple joints and walked down that street. I'm telling you. You know, it's like going from the 13th century to the 28th century. All the shit in the windows and the stuff people were buying and doing everything. I'll tell you, it knocked me out. But you acclimate pretty fast. Of course, I never buy any of that stuff. But I say, I got off the helicopter and on the bus. And Vietnam without drugs, I didn't do any drugs in Vietnam. It's a psychedelic experience in itself. You don't need drugs. Who needs drugs? I do. Yes. Anybody else?
Who started wearing the American flag?
Who started wearing the American? Paul Revere. Many, many people.
Yeah.
Well, Worthy asked me if I knew Country Joe McDonald.
There you go.
And he was a tremendous guy. The reason he and I got along real good is he was a real supporter of Vietnam vets. And when he found out I was a Vietnam vet, he buddied right up with me. And so we'd see each other around and everything, and I'd hear him sing once in a while, but we were never hung out together. But at Woodstock, when I was up on the stage killing time, he came up there. Suddenly, he just pops up there, he's on the microphone. And he said, I want to tell you, he says, out in the West Coast, he says, we know a lot about drugs. He says, we take a lot of LSD. But there's some stuff going around here, this brown LSD. Yeah, he says, that people don't like it. It's not good for them or anything. So I want to tell you right now, don't take it. No, no, no. He says, look around, you'll find the good stuff. Stick with the good stuff. So we had a good time up there talking back and forth. That was the last time I saw him. But we have two men here tonight that will sing Country Joe's song. Come on, let's get them up here. Come on, you'll do it. You can do it. Come on, man. Come on, man.
Talking about the fish cheer?
Yeah. Come on, come on. Da-da-da in Vietnam. Come on.
We need the lyrics.
Come on.
You want to hear the fish cheer?
Yeah.
Whole song.
Do the song.
It's a
I will when they sing.
Was the brown LSD thing real?
Oh, yeah.
The brown
PCP.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what was in there. I never saw it or anything, but there were people that were getting overdosed and stuff. One of the things Hog Farm did at Woodstock was to run this thing called the freak-out tent. And people that were overdosing, they'd take them there, and they'd bring them in there, and they'd lay them down, and they'd comfort them. I had a house I lived in. There were bees lived in the wall. And so I cut a hole in there, and I put a piece of glass in there, so I could watch the bees in there when they were working and everything. And every once in a while, one of these worker bees would just cry. He'd just go crazy. He'd fly down like that. And all the other bees would come over and they'd vibrate him. They'd massage him, all around him, until probably he comes to life and goes flying off again. So in the freak-out tent, somebody'd be lying there and all these hog farmers would get around and they'd be humming and singing and they'd be patting them and rubbing them and everything. And they'll find the person's just, then they'd throw him out the back gate and let the next one in. You guys gonna do it or not?
I tell you what, we need to get we'll get some people lined up to talk to you and sign the books and kind of get that thing going. It's 8 o'clock. This is great. Everybody, great.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you all very much.
So everybody, you need to sit down, get a beverage, get some meat,
Yeah.
okay, get a cuckoo burger.
Can you get a beer here?
We'll get a beer.
One or two good ones.
A cuckoo burger, but we'll be
Cuckoo
set-
burger, I don't eat meat.
I just made that. Well, we
Oh.
can make a cuckoo non-meat burger.
That's right, because it's bird.
It's non-bird, but we'll fake it.
Cuckoo, no, bird is okay. Chicken, I eat chicken.
Okay, I thought that was
gonna eat
meat.
red meat.
Okay, got it. We can handle that.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been great. We're gonna set up camp over here at a table here in the Beer Muted Triangle. Great book.